Matthew 4, verse 1, then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. What's up, guys? Alex here. I want to talk to you about Christian schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is when a person is hearing voices in their head. And I think a lot of times today, Christians can be a little schizophrenic. They can not know the difference between their voice, the devil's voice, and God's voice. And we can be hearing all of these voices in our head and wondering, okay, which one is which? And am I listening to the right one? And so in this video, we're gonna tackle that together. In Matthew chapter 4, Jesus gets tempted by the devil. He gets tempted in the three areas of the world that 1 John 2:16 tells us about: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And those three are going to help us understand the three different voices swirling around in our heads. The first temptation was to eat of the bread, to turn these stones into bread. He was appealing to Jesus' flesh, but Jesus doesn't give in. Ephesians 2:2 tells us that Satan is the prince and the power of the air. That means he is the main influential voice behind the other two areas in the world that John tells us about: the pride of life and the lust of the eyes. The pride of life is all about success and fame. The lust of the eyes is all about, look at that, I want to take that. It's about greed, it's about coveting. And those are the other two temptations in Matthew chapter 4 that we see the devil tempt Jesus with. He says, jump down from here, prove yourself to everybody, you'll be famous, everyone will love you. Another thing he says is, worship me, kneel down before me, and I'll give you the kingdoms of the world. He's saying, shortcut the cross. Don't do what God tells you to do. Just shortcut it by just kneeling down to me. He's appealing to the pride of life and the lust of the eyes. We see all three voices here. Let's jump into those. The first voice is the selfish voice. This is the flesh. The selfish voice wants you to do what feels good by distorting what's actually inherently good. It's about looking out for you and you alone. So this week I went to McDonald's and I pull up in the drive-thru, I order. After my order, the lady taking my order says, okay, thank you, please pull on up, $41.82. I'm like, okay, thank you. So I pull up like a foot and I hear in the intercom under her breath, her say, MFer, like called me an MF-er. And I was like, she tried to hide it, but she didn't know the mic was still on. And so I looked back at the intercom and I was like, I said, thank you. Like, what was that for? And she goes, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. And I was like, okay. So I already had it in my mind, when I get up there, I'm going to talk to her about how that made me feel. I've never been called that in my life, And before this, I had prayed and I was ready to give her a piece of my mind. I was upset, but God softened my heart. And I was able to not respond in the flesh. The flesh is looking out for you and you alone, what feels good. Oh, it's gonna feel so good to get up there to the front of the line and just tell her how I feel and tell her, you need to lose your job and I wanna talk to your manager, pull a full black Karen on this lady. But that was the flesh. And so that was the voice that was loudest in my mind. The second voice is the selfist voice. The selfist voice is the devil's voice. Anytime you put ist on the end of something, it usually means you're better than someone else. So like racist, supremacist, elitist, academist, anytime you put that, it's saying I'm better than you. And that is the heart of the devil. It's the heart of Lucifer. He's prideful. He wanted to make himself better than God. He wanted people to see him as that. And so his voice echoes throughout the world, Ephesians 2:2, the prince and power of the air. And so the world's voice is his voice. I had a spiritual leader in my life tell me, you shouldn't have deleted your TikTok. I know it was tempting you or whatever, and you were kind of losing yourself, but you shouldn't have deleted it because we need to take every example and every chance to spread the gospel. Hearing that from a spiritual leader, that was a turmoil within me. That was a trial, because here I am saying I'm stepping away from the TikTok trap. I'm stepping away from the fame, popularity, losing your soul to recognition and clout chasing. I'm stepping away from that. And here a spiritual leader is telling me, but we need to take every chance to spread the gospel, don't we? See how tricky that is? How tricky the voice of selfist can sound, the selfist voice. It can sound all good and dandy, but In the end, it only leads to prison. The selfist voice will always oppose the natural order of your life. If I would have kept with the TikTok and with the Instagram and chasing clout and building this huge following, I would have continued to push away my family to make videos. My kids wouldn't know who I am in a couple years. Because every time you listen to the selfist voice, it's imprisonment, and it goes against the natural order of things. If Jesus would have jumped down in Matthew chapter 4 and proved himself by angels catching him, if he would have shortcutted the cross, what he would have been doing is he would have been forcing his own way to get what he wanted, to get what the world was telling him he needed. Anytime you choose to force your way and interrupt the natural order of things, you're listening to the selfist voice. Anytime you continue to go down the road of confusion, complicating your life even more, you're listening to the selfist voice. I'm better. I'm going to show you how much better I am. I'm better than this. I don't deserve that. That's the selfist voice. That's not the voice Jesus listened to. Selfless voice is God's voice. The selfless voice always leads to freedom. This week I got my boys this little bedroom basketball set. It like hangs on the back of the door. They had their shower. It was time to go to bed. It was time to just chill. But something told me I need to play basketball with my kids in their room. I don't need to just transition straight to bed and just, put them down for bed. I need to make memories with my kids. I need to have fun with them. And so I had to practice selflessness, put what I wanted aside to play with my kids. And what happened? Next thing you know, we're playing basketball is playing in there. My wife comes in, she's dancing, we're all playing basketball. And then the next day we're watching Space Jam. It was this whole thing. And moments like that don't happen unless you put yourself aside. There's a freedom that comes from only listening to the selfless voice. The selfless road is the only road to the way of freedom. The selfish road, the selfish voice, the selfist voice will always lead to slavery. The selfless voice leads to freedom. That's the voice of God. And that's the voice Jesus listened to. Jesus selflessly laid down his life so we could have the ability to listen to the selfless voice. Because Jesus always listened to the selfless voice, he rose. And that's a promise. The promise is when you choose to identify those voices and you choose to listen to the selfless voice, you're not only just choosing freedom, you're also choosing to glorify God, you're choosing the deepest satisfaction of your soul, and you're choosing to walk in new life. That's the promise of God. He will give you new life when you choose to listen to his voice. Jesus already showed us the way, paid for the way, and that's how it's going to be from now until he gets back. Love you. I hope this helps. Let me know which voice are you listening to. And with that said, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, amenpodcast.com. Follow Amen Podcast on Instagram to keep us going. Keep us encouraged. We love to see your comments and your DMs and stuff like that. But let me know in the comments, which voice are you listening to?